guys, it's Gibson, and welcome back to We Should Talk. We took a week off because of Thanksgiving, but we are back at it. We have a full slate of interviews scheduled for December. It's going to be a good month on the podcast. I'm laying low this month. I drove down, got tested for Thanksgiving to be with my family. And instead of dealing with the back and forth between home and New York, and getting tested more and just like all around moving around, which is not the greatest idea these days, I'm staying put. I'm upping my TV diet even more, as if I wasn't already watching a ton of TV. Now that I'm at home and just chilling with my family and not doing anything really social, TV is how I'm spending my time. So yeah, we have a great lineup of interviews for December, and I'm really excited for you guys to see who we have on We Should Talk this month. First up this week is the wonderful Lauren Zima, who I consider a friend. She works as an Entertainment Tonight correspondent. She also hosts their web series, Roses and Rosé, which covers all things Bachelor for them. She has a podcast coming out this month. She dates Chris Harrison, the Bachelor host. So she is an all-around, like, just preeminent Bachelor authority. And she's just a really great personality. And we had an amazing time talking about her career and how she got to where she was, how she created Roses and Rosé, which is, again, sort of just one of the Bachelor recap shows. And it's so her and funny and amazing. So look that up on YouTube if you haven't watched it before. We talked about her relationship with Chris. We talked about sort of the line between sort of the personal and the professional for her, after she's also gotten to know a lot of the other Bachelor stars over the years after interviewing them a lot. We talked about what she thinks of the current season of The Bachelorette, which went from obviously Claire to Tayshia, and sort of where she stands and all of that. So yeah, it was a really, really great interview. We talked just before the holiday, but you're hearing it this week, and I'm really excited for you guys to listen to that. But before we get to that, there's only one thing that we can really talk about right now, and that is the finale of The Undoing. By the time you listen to this, it will have been sort of like 4 to 5 days since that aired. But there's nothing like event television for me. You know, like there's something about everyone talking about the same episode of the same show. You know, with The Undoing, we were leading up to this big finale after like almost 2 months of watching this HBO show. And by the time we got to the finale, it seemed like almost everyone I knew was watching it and was really, really invested in it. And it seemed like everyone also had a theory as to who done it, right? Like that is sort of the sign of a good show, is that it's not obvious who did it. I think everyone had theories about almost every single character. There aren't that many characters in The Undoing, but there were signs that each one had something shady going on. And talking to my friends in the lead up to the finale, it was sort of like, everyone thought somebody different. And I loved that. And I loved the conversation that it sparked. And also, I should say, spoilers ahead. If you have not watched the finale of The Undoing, if you have not watched The Undoing at all, fast forward to the interview with Lauren, because I don't want you to be I don't want the show to be ruined for you. But when we get to the finale of The Undoing, there's sort of this huge lead up, and turns out it's Hugh Grant's character that did it. All signs pointed to him throughout the entire series. He's the one that ran away after the murder. He's the one that was having an affair with the victim. He's the one that was lying. He's the one that was being shady. And yet, all of us came up with these wild, insane theories to explain why he didn't do it, right? Like, people said that Nicole Kidman's character had a psychotic break and she didn't remember doing it, and she was actually the murderer. There were people that thought her lawyer friend Sylvia was the other woman in Hugh Grant's relationship, and I was one of those people, and that maybe she killed her out of jealousy or something. There were people that thought Nicole Kidman's dad did it. There were people that thought that Nicole Kidman's son did it. And yet, it was just Hugh Grant that did it. And I think it said something about the fact that, like, it made space for us to create all these different theories to explain why all the different characters did it. But at the end of the day, it was the rich, white, unfaithful man who committed the murder. And I think it says something sort of about the internalized acceptance of like toxic masculinity that we all have. The fact that we kind of wanted to pin it on the blonde lawyer, female friend, or Nicole Kidman sort of speaks to like some of our internalized misogyny. It's just so interesting that like after all of that, it was this guy that did it. And obviously it's a fictional story, but I think it says something about the viewers and how we took this story and how we sort of ran with it and created all these wild theories when ultimately the signs were all right there as to who did it. Anyway, it was a fun ride. And somebody made a really good point on Twitter, actually. I think a lot of people were sort of like let down by the finale. Like, oh, it's just Hugh Grant the whole time. Like, why did we spend our 7 or 8 weeks watching this? But I think you know, if the show had been on Netflix, which would have dropped all the episodes at once, yeah, like we would have expected some huge, big twist and deserved that because we would have binged it, right? We would have watched it all in one weekend. We would have hunkered down and just like sped through this show. But the success of The Undoing and sort of the way that it strung us along and kept us on our toes and kept us guessing and kind of until the very, very end, it speaks to sort of like the continued relevance and effectiveness of the week-to-week TV model. Because, you know, like we were all sort of stringing along and we were all sort of waiting for each new episode week after week. And it sort of felt like this really fun sort of like lead up to this huge moment. And I think there was a huge moment in the finale when Nicole Kidman turns on Hugh Grant. But regardless, I think that it just sort of speaks to sort of like where prestige TV is these days and sort of the different ways the different models of releasing episodes works. Anyway, so that's sort of my thoughts on The Undoing. Before we get to my interview with Lauren Zima, I was thinking about the first time that I hung out with Lauren. I was in LA several years ago, and Lauren had been a professional contact. We worked together. We were sort of content partners. And so we've been emailing almost every day for the past several years. And so when I was in LA, I reached out. So I set up drinks with Lauren and two of her other coworkers who I love, Bryce Sander and Denny Directo. And we met for drinks at Pump, which is Lisa Vanderpump's gay bar, restaurant, cocktail lounge, cocktail garden, whatever she calls it. And we had this great round of drinks. And we were sort of obviously talking about Vanderpump Rules, which takes place at SUR around the corner. And what do you know? In walk Ken and Lisa Vanderpump. Lisa is holding Jiggy under her arm, and she just strolls right in like the queen that she is or was, depending on your point of view on her. And it was just like sort of like one of those ultimate celebrity sightings, right? It was sort of like we were at her restaurant. I was in LA for less than a week. We had just been talking about her show, and in walks the matriarch, in walks the person who runs the restaurant. And it was just great. It was a great little kind of dream Bravo sighting. Anyway, keep listening for my interview with Lauren Zima, ET correspondent, Roses and Rosé host, future podcast host. Her podcast comes out this month. So yeah, really enjoy. There's some great Bachelor tea. There's some great insights into her career. And yeah, it's a really fun one. Enjoy. So we are here with Lauren Zima, my friend and correspondent at Entertainment Tonight and podcast host and just all around like wears many hats. Lauren, how are you?
Oh, Gibson, thank you for that introduction. I'm so happy to be here. You and I have worked together for years through different brand connections and partnerships. And now I just love that I'm sitting here watching you do the podcast thing. Look at us fly. I love it.
I love this. And I was just thinking about sort of like our past working relationship. And at one point we got drinks at Pump, Lisa Vanderpump's bar.
Yes.
And I feel like that was like simultaneously yesterday and also 10 years ago. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but time flies.
And did you see, I think she just tweeted that they're closing Pump.
I heard that, which is, that's tragic for many reasons, but.
I mean, those pink cushions, some stained with wine, full of stories. I hope it's not forever. I really do, because that would be upsetting.
I agree. So Lauren, obviously 2020 has been a crazy year for a lot of people with a lot of ups, lots of downs. You've had some good ups. You won an Emmy this year, which is amazing. Yes, we see it in the background of this video.
We film everything in our Zooms in our offices now. We're back on the lot for Entertainment Tonight on our studio lot, and we're getting COVID tested and wearing masks and socially distancing. But we're doing our Zoom interviews in our offices. So I had to kind of set dress my office, and what's better than an Emmy? Put it right there by the mini fridge.
There's no better decoration. Come on. But what has 2020 been like for you? Just like overall, how are you holding up? Where's your mind at right now?
I feel so much better now than I did a matter of months ago. I'm hoping this means a better turn. You know, I think we've all experienced in the last couple of weeks, especially like some better news, vaccine news, and hopefully moving forward in a new chapter for our country that's going to be great and all kinds of things. So I certainly feel better. I was surprised by how much I was impacted by everything because I'm not someone who's ever dealt with anxiety or depression before, really. And I've been through a couple of things. Like I lost my father when I was in my early 20s, and I've been divorced. So I've been through some stuff. And I was sort of shocked by, like in the beginning of all this, I thought I had COVID because my chest was really hurting. But then I would like go on an uphill walk with my boyfriend and he'd say, "You're breathing fine. I don't know." And finally, and this was like in March when it was really scary and you couldn't really get tested. So finally we went to go see a doctor and he's like, "So what are your symptoms?" I'm like, "My chest is feeling tight. And I just feel very tense." And he's saying, "Does it get worse if you're watching the news?" I'm like, "Yes, it does." And he goes, "Okay, that is anxiety."
Thank you. Wow. I mean,
Like, oh.
but honestly, that's good to that's honestly that's probably some sort of like reaffirmation that like, you know, it's you're not making it up. Like it is real that it does manifest physically sometimes, and
Yes, and
it's crazy.
I think it was. I bring that up because as we're talking about work, I think what hit me was having my whole professional world turned upside down. I'm somebody who loves my job so much. I work so much because I enjoy what I do. And to suddenly not be at the office, not see all those people. And I know everybody experienced that. And I know that frontline workers and so many people had it a million times harder than I did. That was just my own reaction. And I was sort of a little shocked that I did react to it so much. So I think I'm also a lot happier, like being back in the office. People are sort of surprised to hear, "Wow, you're getting tested and you're doing all these things. Isn't that hard?" And no, I'm just so happy to be back in the office, and especially to have people like our crew members and stuff at ET working and all that. So it's been, we're seeing positive turns.
For sure.
We are turning the corner, I think, and I hope.
Yes. It's nice for you to not just be cooped up at home like a lot of people. And it's nice to have some of that routine back in your life.
To be here to you, my friend.
Exactly. Likewise. Before we get too far into it, I would love for us to just hear a little bit more about how you got to where you are, because, you know, even just the past several years of knowing you myself, your career has really gone on an upward trajectory and a lot has changed for you. So talk to me a little bit about how you got to ET and sort of also how you started Roses and Rosé, and sort of you've built this huge platform for yourself on the back of a really amazing career already.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So Roses and Rosé is my Bachelor franchise recap review show. So I created and host that. And I do it under the umbrella of Entertainment Tonight. So it's available on our YouTube channel. You can check it out there. But yeah, so I started the Cliff's Notes is I've kind of always done journalism and like acting comedy. I've done acting since I was little, and since I was little, like I interned for the Daily Herald in Chicago when I was like 9, which
I love it.
Call that an internship. And then I did my high school newspaper and my high school theater, and then in college I was a journalism major at the University of Missouri and a theater minor. So I've always done all these things, and I kind of feel like I'm at this beautiful place in my career now where those things that I love to do have come together, and it's managed to give me, I think, kind of a unique voice and perspective. And so that's what I always encourage people to do is like, how can, what you love, how can that make you different? And I went to a journalism school, then moved to LA, was working for Variety for a little while, and got offered a position at this startup called Newsy, where I'd worked while I was in college. Decided to take that job. So important, I think, to try to build something at some point in your career, to work at a startup, to learn what it's like to be in the trenches. You and I were just talking about this with podcasting, like to learn it all yourself really pushes you.
For sure. And it gives you appreciation for what everyone's role is when you have those people to do it with you as well.
Exactly. I've managed people before, just in a work position. And I always say it's the difference of like being the person who's up high, and, preaching down to the people who you work for and telling them what to do versus like standing in front of them and leading the way and talking to them that way. I think that you have to have an understanding of everybody's job in order to not just lead well, but also to push yourself further. So I was working at Newsy, and it's kind of this, I work really hard and I think was doing a good job at Newsy. I was growing there and we just gotten acquired by Scripps Media. But at the same time, sometimes things are just like luck and magic. And basically Entertainment Tonight, our current producer, Erin Johnson, she had come to kind of check out what Newsy was doing, how we were making online news videos so fast. And I remember that day, our sales guy told me, hey, you know, you run all of our entertainment news. ET is here. Like, please give them a tour. I'm like, of course, absolutely. Just trying to help the company. So I give them a tour of the office, and then it had been a long day because I think I was working the CMAs or something. It was an award show. And he said, you know, I have to take them to dinner, like just kind of a business dinner, but don't feel like you have to go. I know you've been working all night, because I was even working overnights at the time. I think I worked overnights for like 2 years. And I said, no, I want to go. It's always good to, like, you know, meet people and build relationships. And at that dinner, Aaron was looking at me kind of weird. And I truly thought I had something in my teeth. Like the second I walked out of dinner, I looked in the mirror. I'm like, did I have something in my face? What was it? And the next day I get a text from a number I don't have saved. And it said, hey, do you want to come work at ET, with a palm tree emoji?
Very cryptic, but also like, tell me more.
Right. I was like, palm tree emoji? What a job offer with an emoji. I love it so much. And it turned out that Erin had gotten my number somehow. And she truly, I think been impressed by me at
you
dinner.
Connected. Yeah.
Yeah. And she wanted me to come work at ET.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was really a life-changing moment for me, because ET is this incredible storied brand. I mean, the first ever entertainment news show, and currently the #1 entertainment news show still in our 40th season. So Aaron brought me on to help build the online news video brand, because that's what I'd done at Newsy. So I really made us make news video faster here at ET, and did a bunch of that. And then I kind of was also always pitching ideas. Like I said, you know, why aren't we doing more with The Bachelor? Because I've been covering reality TV at Newsy, and I'm like, ET could be doing more with this. Let's do an online video recap show. And what was great about Entertainment Tonight, my boss at the time on the digital side, Shayna Krochmal, who's now at Entertainment
Love Shayna,
Weekly.
yeah.
Yes, she was just like, do it, try it, throw spaghetti at the wall. So she was very encouraging. So it was this great moment of being at this big brand where they had this startup mentality of encouraging people to try things. And that's how I started doing Roses and Rosé. And next year will be 5 years of doing it, which is kind of crazy.
Wild. That is wild.
Yeah. But that's how I got where I am. And I think like a big thing I always tell people is relationships mean so much in this business. You know, even in a day and age where we can apply online to things, I've gotten every job that I have because I knew someone, because I had worked on my relationship with them. You and I are sitting here now because we've worked together.
Exactly.
So that's the very long and yet short version. I don't know how long I just spoke. I'm sorry.
No, but I think it's always interesting to hear how people get to where they are, because it's just about like taking those little opportunities. Oh, you're going to go tour the office with these partners of yours, or that just are curious about what you do. That turned into your career. That's just amazing. And I'm curious, like for Roses Rosé, it's crazy that we're going on 5 years. Again, I remember when you started it. And when did you know that it was going to be a hit? Was there like an inflection point where you were like, oh, I can be doing this for a while because people are really into it?
That's a really good question. I I don't think there was ever one moment specifically, but I do remember when people like, look, reading the comments on the internet can be real dangerous, right?
Horrible.
I try to avoid it because people are brave.
Don't scroll down.
Don't scroll down. But I do remember when I did sort of peek my eye open and look at the comments on YouTube, because our YouTube manager told me, you have really positive YouTube comments, like unusually. So he kind of allowed me to be brave and go look, and people were saying they loved it. And then I started kind of getting messages on Instagram about people loving it. And that response, you know, as small as it might have been at the time, I just thought, okay, if people like something, if you have an amount of people who like something, how can you look at what they're liking, magnify that, explore that, build it up, and then more people will come to it. You know, it was just like I had this little focus group, and when you found out what the focus group liked with that direct feedback, then I could dig into it even more. And I've truly just worked on building it over the years. We didn't have one moment where like a clip went viral, or one interview I did or one thing I said was huge. It's just been a slow and steady build. but it's been very much about listening to what the audience said. Like we've made changes of, I very specifically in the first minute of the video asked people, what did you think of the episode? Because I found that they really loved feeling like we had that relationship of engagement, which we do. I love to hear from everybody. So, but I never thought, I thought, oh, they'll just leave their comments. And then I realized, no, it makes a difference to ask them to start that conversation. So
Definitely.
I've learned things like that over the years for sure.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think what's also so special about Roses and Rosé is that there's two things that I really appreciate about it. One is that it combines the beat that you are most known for, which is The Bachelor, and you get great Bachelor scoop, and you have really great relationships with a lot of people in Bachelor Nation, and it also just feels very you. It feels it's very informed, it's very funny, it's a little bit weird, and but it's very you. And I think that you've successfully been able to infuse yourself very authentically into this show every week. And I'm curious, like, was that just a natural thing for you, or does this really feel like the one of the biggest times that you've been able to really put like your full personality into something?
Yeah, well, I want to thank you because I think I was ranting about something earlier and you've just helped me make a full circle moment. So Gibson, podcast host of the year, thank you. What I was ranting about earlier was doing theater and journalism. And that is like what Roses and Rosé has really felt like that culmination to me. Because I interview people for The Bachelor, and look, it's, I think what's great is I couldn't, I mean, I don't know. There's a balance of when you can be comedic and when you can't, right? Because there are more serious moments, but at the same time, it's a reality show and we can have fun with it. Then again, I was just thinking, people can certainly have comedy with politics, and then that's important too.
That's true. Mm-hmm. That's a good caveat.
But but I really am my weirdest, quirkiest, silliest self doing Roses and Rosé. I like pop out from behind the couch. I spit wine all over myself. I do really over the top stuff. I fall down on the floor, and it makes me so happy that I was, again, greenlit the opportunity to do this by the brand that I work at, and then that it has worked. It's really a beautiful feeling to think that you are your oddest self and that people enjoy that. So yeah, like I said, I've done improv comedy in college. I did Upright Citizens Brigade and Improv Olympic and some different theaters in LA. And so sort of all those years of working on that have come in Roses and Rosé. Like, the comedic principles of like, there's a rule of threes in comedy, like I will name 3 funny things about the Bachelor episode in a row. Or yes anding. I do Roses and Rosé on my own, but I yes and myself. I'm like, how can keep that going?
It really is a dialogue with yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Say a weird thing, but then what's the next weird thing? The next weird thing. Okay, now we are insane. Now we've got to cut ourselves off and like graphic wipe to get out of this moment. So yeah, and it's really been fun. I just say I found a way to get paid to drink at work also. So that's been great. That's been really fun.
It's always a plus, always a plus. Yes. And you mentioned, obviously you have interviewed, countless Bachelor personalities over the years. And I'm curious just sort of, and obviously you've become close with some of them as well. Mm-hmm. What for you is sort of like, how do you separate the personal and the professional for you when it comes to interviews? Because you obviously, you're talking not just on camera with these people, and I'm just curious how you sort of like manage that, because it's a difficult line probably sometimes. Yeah,
I've thought about it a lot, and what I go back to is that it's not a new issue to navigate. I think so much about like what it must have been like. Do you ever think, God, I wish we had cell phones when? Like, imagine like the JFK days of the White House,
right.
When the press was just kind of with him all the time. I always think what press years ago must have seen that they didn't necessarily report on or whatever.
For sure.
And look, journalism is storytelling, and there's a humanity to storytelling, and we tell our best stories when we're being human and seeing other people as human. On The Bachelor, as much as it is this reality show, you're asking people about their love stories and painful emotional things. So you have to have a humanity to you. And I think you get the best interviews and the most honest sharing from people when they can feel that. So it would be impossible to sit down with someone and ask them about their most personal, vulnerable moments without having some level of a connection with them, right?
Definitely.
And I think it would also be impossible to interview people for years, because in Bachelor Nation, people stick around. You know, they're on
Oh
Paradise.
yeah, we know that.
They're on show number 5.
Yeah,
So it would be literally impossible, again, to not like develop a relationship with someone after having interviewed them for years. And I feel okay about that, because I think it gives you better narratives from them, and it
definitely.
allows them to share more, and that's what the audience connects to, and that's what they want to hear. So it is just a balance of, you know, I think talking things out with people, like, hey, what do you feel comfortable sharing? And also telling them things like, hey, I have to share that. I have to, you know,
You have to ask
I
that
will very
question.
often, yeah, I will very often, when I'm like booking an interview, say, hey, we're going to have to get into this. Or if somebody isn't happy with something after, I will say, look, that was a newsworthy question, and I had to ask you that question. And I wouldn't have been doing my job if I didn't. So it's just about balancing that. And I've found it to be actually more rewarding to navigate how to balance that than if I just ignored it and acted like I wasn't human.
For sure. Yeah. And who would you say you have gotten sort of like closest to in terms of just like cultivating a friendship with? Because for example, like Caitlin Bristow just won Dancing with the Stars, and she's obviously been around. She's been around in this Bachelor world for years and years and years, and she's such a great figure. And I'm sure you guys are close, but who are some of the people that you feel closest to just on a human level?
Yes, I mean, Caitlin for sure. I've
Mm-hmm.
been interviewing her. I was looking at the time of it all the other day. I've been thinking about time so much, and it's funny.
We all have. It's weird.
Right? Ben Higgins was the first person I ever interviewed at ET for the Bachelor
Wow.
franchise. And that was a big moment for me, because I'd covered reality shows while at Newsy, but I hadn't been doing interviews at Newsy. So to come to ET and to interview and to be like, oh, I was kind of comedically recapping this stuff before, but now I'm sitting down with you. That was a big moment. So, and Ben and I are also, I think the age thing makes a difference. Like, with people who are younger than me, when I interview them in the Bachelor world, I feel a bit more, I don't know, not mentoring isn't the right word, but there's just a different, it's a little easier to be friendly with
For
people who
sure.
are in
Different
their same
dynamic.
age.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Ben and I are very close. Caitlin and I are very close. I love her boyfriend, Jason Tardik. And Nick Viala, somebody who like I've been on his podcast so many times, and he lives here in LA, so very friendly with Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Those are I mean, Raven Gates, I love her, and Adam, her fiance. They live in Texas, and my boyfriend Chris Harrison is from Texas, so we adore them.
Bond over that. Love that.
Yes, so there's lots. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm at an
Just going
award
down
show.
the list. Just going
But
down the
yes,
list.
let me accept my Bachelor Oscar. And if I forget someone, I'm gonna feel horrible. There really are so
Yeah.
many people though.
Yeah.
So, but that's a few.
But
Wow.
conversely, though, I mean, like you said, people do stick around in this world for a long time. And are
Mhm.
there, and you don't have to name names, but if there's people that you don't vibe with as much, like how do you
Mm.
sort of deal with that? With that, like if you're sitting down with an interview with somebody for the third time, and it's like, you know, maybe you haven't hit it off, or maybe you don't love what they did on the
Yeah.
show. You know what I mean?
Well, I truly and honestly would say there's no one who I interview at this point who I like don't like from the world. I will say that,
Mm-hmm.
because people are always like, who do you like? Who do you not like? Everybody who I might have any type of a barrier on getting personally close with, I love them because they're great TV. You know, like
Right.
I
Totally.
have a
Totally.
different love for you because you are wonderful to watch on television.
Yes.
But also, you know, when there's somebody who you maybe find a bit more challenging, well, then I get excited to interview them because of the challenge. I think
Yeah.
like, how can I dig in here and get that insight that I want, even with this person who might have their walls up, or who might be a little full of themselves after having been on reality television, you know, or any of those things. Because there certainly are people, you know, when you go from you know, oh, I'm from Iowa or Idaho or anywhere, and I've just been this normal person, to I've skyrocketed to fame and millions of
Yeah.
followers on Instagram and all that. People can have a little moment, and they usually even out once the next season of the show comes on. They usually
Mm-hmm.
realize, oh wait, I had a moment, and that moment might continue, but maybe it's not everything I thought. So there are those moments like that. There are some people, you know, Hmm. Some people who I did.
Choose our words wisely.
Well, I'm thinking of there are some people who have gone into porn, and so I don't speak to
Mm.
those
That
people.
is a fact. That is a fact.
I
Yes.
don't know what to say
It's,
there.
yeah. That's not ET friendly programming. Okay.
No,
Come
it's
on.
not. I just don't know what to say there. That's all.
And you mentioned you have a very important boyfriend in the Bachelor world, Chris Harrison.
Yes.
And with that, again, it's been interesting watching kind of there's coverage of Lauren Zima. There's articles that are what to know about Chris Harrison's girlfriend, Lauren Zima, and it's so actually fun to watch that. It's just a friend of yours. But how have you dealt with that added attention that comes with it's tied to a personal relationship, and how do you deal with just sort of like being covered in that way?
So when we first started dating, I mean, I went and talked to everybody at ET about it when we were getting serious. And we both kind of made that decision that we were only going to go public with this if it was really serious, because otherwise it wasn't worth the trouble.
Yeah.
But we're in this, it was never a problem. It was just because, I think we really tried to handle it like adults and just say we're two adults in a relationship. Shockingly, we have a lot in common, and we do so much of the same thing that we, at one point when we were both single and available, like realized, oh, we were bonding over this and we're attracted to each other. And I really find that in media, actually. I think we all like work such crazy hours and get in the trenches so much that we date each other. It just happens.
It makes sense. It does.
Yeah. And in the Bachelor world, there's certainly a lot of beautiful, for lack of a better word, incest going on there. And I don't know what else to call it. I've thought about it. I need a better word.
Hey, I use it too. There is no better word, I don't think.
Call it intermingling.
Yeah, I guess.
Crossover.
Crossover is a good one.
I don't know. You talk to people in the Bachelor world, and it's like someone like Caitlin's boyfriend, Jason, used to date Becca Kufrin, who is her friend. Like it's just also
for sure.
Funny.
It comes with the territory.
Yeah, it's very on brand. It's very on brand for the franchise. Yeah. But love is love. What's great. And, yeah. So we just like talked that out. And now I think it's sort of this great thing where we get to talk so much about our work together and see each other through work and really understand each other's jobs. So we're just in a really great place with it. And people will ask me all the time, do you get the spoilers of the show?
Of course.
Of course. And the truth is, I tell him, don't spoil the show for me, because I need to recap it and review it like an audience member. It is kind of funny because, he will sort of, like when he's filming, especially when they've been filming in the bubble and he's been gone, he'll be like, oh, I had like a rough day today. Or like, man, this one, he'll speak to me in generalities, like this date today just did not go well. It didn't like go on the way we had it planned. And then later when I'm watching, it'll sort of click and I'll think, oh, that was
the date.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
So does Chris want to tell you stuff? And you're like, no, Chris, like literally, I don't want to hear it. Like as a reporter who is working on this, I don't want to hear it. Or is it just sort of an understanding?
It's not so much that he's like dying to, but sometimes he'll just be telling me about his day and he'll be about to say something and I'll say, oh wait, no, don't tell me that. I kind of have to stop him. But look, are there things where like, did I know where he was when he was filming The Bachelor? Yes, I was aware of his location. But I also tell people like, that's something, and you know this from being in journalism, like if you're covering anything, you have some kind of awareness that you need to have in order to do your job. Like when we're covering Housewives, we get screeners of the show in advance because you got to have your review ready to go. So part of that was nothing new. Like I would have known things about the franchise in advance, just in doing reporting on it. So yeah, but I'll stop him sometimes. I'll earmuffs. Stop. No, I don't care that much about your day. I want to watch the show.
I love it. And would you ever want to have his job? Would you ever want to be the host of The Bachelor, the host of The Bachelorette?
Gosh, I could just never do it as well as him.
Yeah.
So no, I would not want to fill those shoes. No, I would never. I am in awe of him when I watch him on the show. Oh gosh, I just got kind of emotional thinking about it. I'm just so struck by his talents, by the way he makes what is not easy look so easy. Like when you think about what they did this season in terms of like, when has a show ever had to change their lead in the middle of their season? It's
Never. No, it's unheard of. It's unheard of. And they adapted so quickly
and the
and
way
so
that
well.
yes, the way he navigated that and like did the sit downs, and you know, he's not involved in every producing decision, but he's a producer on the show and he
Yeah.
talks things out with them and gives his insight and comes up with ideas. So the way that they all handled that, I am just amazed by. And when I watch him like make a funny comment or ask a question, like, you know, when you watch the Claire Crawley and Dale Moss sit down.
I did. Yes.
Yes. So when Chris asked what's next for you guys, and Claire said, Dale started to say, well, we're going to do this. And Claire goes, babies. And Dale started to say, so yeah, we're thinking about our next. And Chris goes, whoa, Dale, you just blew right past that. She just said babies. And I just thought to myself, people don't, I think, realize that a lot of interviewers in that position would have just kept going, would have followed what Dale was saying. And Chris stopped and said, no, Dale. And he's great at his job. He is. He listens
really
as an
is.
interviewer and doesn't make it about him. And that's how he gets such great moments with people.
There's a reason why he's been around on that show for, I don't even know, 30 seasons. It's more than that. I mean, if you combine them all, it's wild. I mean, speaking of Claire and Dale, I mean, I'm just curious, as somebody, again, who's been like, you're a scholar of the show. What do you think of the Claire and Dale of it all? How do you think that, specifically, I'm curious how you think Claire handled the situation, because I saw, at least on social media, I saw a lot of different opinions on that. A lot of people negatively reacting to how she handled the whole situation. What do you think?
I think that Claire handled the situation as Claire, you know, would I have handled it differently in the moment? Absolutely. But that is based on what I've been through. Like I think I've rushed into very serious relationships too quickly before. So I'm pretty hesitant about that personally. But I think Claire is a person who, you know, we kind of saw her, like we heard her say that she thinks she and Dale met in another realm. We saw her like with her crystals. I think Claire's a very spiritual person, and she, especially having seen her parents fall in love very quickly and knowing they had a good relationship, a beautiful marriage. I think she just, the stars aligned for that to be the way she reacted to, I feel like I have this connection with this person,
right?
You know? So she did what she would have done in that situation. Do I think that Claire and Dale absolutely need like some time living in the regular world to explore their relationship more? Yes. And I would tell them that. Because I tell anybody on the show that, but also they went from like quarantining to being in this quarantine bubble in this super crazy year. We're all reevaluating normal life, right?
Totally.
And what our new normal looks like. So I think that Claire reacted as she would have. I think Claire could have treated the other guys a little differently. That's
sort of my complaint about it. It's just sort of like, I felt like there was like a disregard for their time and like what they had been through to get onto the show. I mean, especially this year, you know, and that's what I, just as a viewer, was like, you know, like I feel like she could have respected their time a little bit better.
I think so too. I do. And I would say that to her. Absolutely. Yeah. But you know, she was in love. Hindsight be 2020. I know.
Exactly.
What did you think of it? Because now I just want to get into like recapping the Bachelor.
I know, right? I mean, that's what I thought. I was getting frustrated because, and I wasn't sure if it was the way it was edited and just sort of like, you know, she would come back and she would be like, oh, like what they say about Dale? Like, what are they saying about Dale? And like say that to every single person. You know, that scene when they did it back to back to back. And I was just like, is this actually how it went? Is this? It kind of seems like that is how she was being. It's just sort of like there was one track mind, Dale, and I felt for the other guys, you know, I felt, and to me, like when Tayshia came in, it was a breath of fresh. And I was just like, this is what I want from a season of The Bachelorette, is just somebody who is excited about multiple guys, who is giving them all the time of day. She's gorgeous. She's funny. She gets serious. I mean, the conversation between her and Ivan on last night's episode, like amazing. I was tearing up watching that. Like, yes. I don't know. I think I'm glad about the replacement, but I'm also, you know, happy for Claire. you know?
I think it's been this perfect sort of yin and yang season of like,
Yes.
because obviously Claire was so connected to Dale. And I will say, I don't know what Claire's season would have looked like if she hadn't been quarantined. Like, I'm not sure if she would have fallen so hard so fast. I think she has said she was like looking at Dale on her phone and kind of had done all this, I don't know, recon work. And then I think she met him in person and it was like, oh, yep, he's what I want. Yes, confirmed. But Claire and Dale's season, I was captivated. I was on the edge of my seat. So watching those wild, however many weeks those were, then I feel like we were in an Indy 500 race, and that had its excitement. And now we're on this like awesome road trip with Tayshia where it's slower and we're seeing the sights. And Tayshia is so the perfect counterpart to what that season was, because she is this quintessential Bachelorette. We had the most off the charts weird, like unusual season, and now we're getting this like familiar, beautiful season. So it's been
it's a roller coaster, and
very 2020 vibes.
Very 2020, and I think, you know, last thing I'll say about Claire is that it did feel like you were sort of watching two people fall in love almost at first sight. It sort of felt like that, and I don't feel like I've seen that much on this show. It usually is a longer build, and you know, there's something to say about that.
I want to interview Claire and Dale. They've not been doing interviews. I would love to talk to them. I have many, many questions. And one thing I love to do in an interview is challenge a little bit, push a little bit. And I would do that with them, but I would also do it from a place of like wanting to see, like, I would love if we'd witnessed real love at first sight on the show. Oh my gosh, that's crazy amazing.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. And last thing about The Bachelor is I'm curious, just again, as somebody who has been in the weeds with this show for so long, I think one of the biggest criticisms of Bachelor Nation is that it's been overwhelmingly white for a long time. It's been a little bit like slow to adapt to changes in society, you know, when it comes to race and gender norms and fluid sexuality and just like all these things that are talked about so much outside of the Bachelor world, and they sometimes permeate the universe of The Bachelor, but sometimes don't. And I'm curious, like, what do you think of how the show approaches these topics? And also, on top of that, what changes do you hope to see going forward? Do you hope that it embraces more of that?
Oh gosh, I mean, yes. I think they're doing a really good job these last several seasons of it. And, you know, I mean, this summer, the movement that we had, I loved that we watched Ivan and Tayshia have a conversation about that on the last episode. I loved that they included that. And, you know, it's such a balance, because I think, you know, people will certainly like say, have all these serious conversations on the show. Well, if we constantly had serious conversations all the time on the show, it wouldn't be the crazy, wild Bachelorette show that people love to watch.
Totally, you're right.
I think they've done a great job of peppering not just something like that in, but, you know, Claire and Dale talking about grief. As someone who's lost a parent, I loved watching that conversation because I related to it. It was emotional. It felt so real. So when they put that stuff in this great edited way of like, I think it makes it really powerful to just show this conversation. I mean, imagine how they have to edit that stuff down. You know, it's probably hours long, and for them to do that, I just thought they handled a lot of things really well recently. Going back to Peter Weber's season, I mean, he was a Cuban, and they had a very diverse cast that season. I think they've always, and you know, the producers have talked about this. In part, it's the challenge of you've got to also deal with like who your lead's attracted to, who winds up in their final four, and how does that cycle into what the next seasons of our show look like. So they're always doing that balance, but they've really tried to make casting more diverse at the start. And, you know, I know they acknowledged that this summer they could have done a better job. And so I think that's all anybody can ever do is say, look, we could have done a better job, and so now we're going to do better from here. And I love that we're getting back-to-back leads of color with Tayshia and then with Matt James coming up. So I'm very excited by it all. I love Joe Park, the anesthesiologist who is of Korean descent. He was
Yeah,
great.
he's amazing. Yeah.
I hope we see him in paradise. So, I think it can be a challenge for the franchise, because when you have a franchise that is like this reality show that people feel so connected to, Bachelor Nation, and they want to see themselves, as we all do, and want to see their stories. Sometimes it's like the challenge of, how do we fit that all in? How do we do it respectfully? How do we do it powerfully and impactfully? And I think they're going to keep doing their best,
Yeah. It's they're clearly trying to improve in those departments. And I think, again, like that's sort of all you can ask. It's like, it's not going to be an overwhelming change overnight, but they're peppering these things in. And I think there's clearly an effort being made. And I think, again, that's really awesome. And finally, I want to end on this, because I can't do an interview without bringing up Bravo, because that's just how my brain works.
We've done this whole podcast about Bravo.
With Bravo versus Bachelor, I think sometimes they're sort of like, you can only do one or the other, right? And for a while, like I was doing both, and then I sort of dipped out of the Bachelor, and now I'm back into both. I know you do both. I don't know how up to date you are on everything, but how do you balance the two worlds? Because I think
wow, what a question. What an impact.
It's a hard hitting question, but I want to know.
How do we balance our two worlds? Well, I've certainly interviewed the housewives through ET, but I've done a bit less interviews of the Bravo world.
Yeah.
Wonderful colleague Bryce Sander over at Entertainment
Love
Tonight.
him. Yeah.
Yes, and love Bryce. He does most of our Bravo interviews. So that's like kind of made Bravo stay a bit more just like fun recappy versus reporting for me.
Yes.
So I'm able to like just unwind a bit more in my personal time with Bravo, and I'm going to be reviewing it, but like I think I just want to keep it reviewy and fun, so you can come on and we can just chat and talk about it. But
hello, that's my expertise.
Yes, I think it's hard to be like to report on everything. It's this balance of when you love what you do and how you like keep your job
absolutely
fun and not kill it with work, but at the same time be happy that it is your work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to stay away from the reporting on Bravo. That's what I'm trying to do.
That's good. That's a good one. And give me the plugs. Where can they listen to it, and where can they follow you?
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter at Lauren Zima. And I also do Roses and Rosé and interviews on Entertainment Tonight. I'm on our broadcast show every night. Check your local listings. And that's everything we got, Gibbs.
I love it. You're everywhere, and I love to see it. It's been so fun. Lauren Zima, thank you so much for calling in, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I adore you, and I'm so happy to listen to your podcast. So subscribe. Thanks, friend.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe to We Should Talk on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Any support you can give us would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me, Gibson Johns, at Gibsonoma on Instagram and Twitter. And you can follow In the Know at In the Know on Twitter and at Watch In the Know on Instagram. We'll see you next time.